My deepest apologies. Let me introduce myself properly. I'm your future and your prophecy. Navigate the way to the top, girl, just follow me. I love playing Monopoly. Your body is my property. Your mind is my motivation. Play your cards right, you get the whole world out of me.
Ladies and gentlemen who are, viewing, I think this is a really good thing that, we can get a perspective from someone that is born in Africa, and he's actually been here, he said, about 15 years. So
I wanted everyone to know that I really appreciate your content. You say a whole lot of good things. My experience is going to be a mixed bag of emotions. Some were good, some not so good. Like, there's a lot of misconceptions whether it affects the way we communicate with each other. Living in America, there's definitely opportunities, or some opportunities, that living in Africa I never would have had. Access to reliable healthcare, and I say reliable is very relative, because to someone here it might not be or might not feel,
because we're used to it.
But compared to where I come from, it's leaps and bounds much better quality. So everything has to be put in its proper context, in which, a lot of us have to understand that when we come from somewhere where we didn't have at all or not enough of one thing, and you come to a place where it's offered, then we will definitely appreciate that.
Like Wi-Fi and electricity.
Steady Wi-Fi, steady electricity. Mm-hmm. Yes, I'm sure, as you've had your experience going to Nigeria with NEPA and everything.
One thing I don't understand about, particularly Nigeria, because, that's the place that I've traveled to, but most of our doctors, our teachers are Nigerians, and I don't understand why is it that a lot of Nigerians or people in West Africa, they rather send their children here to be educated. I do understand the Wi-Fi and the electricity situation, but as far as the education is concerned.
In Africa, since we were colonized, a lot of us back home still rely heavily on the doctrine that the foreign education is best. The reason why we believe that is because those countries are more developed than we are, or at least on the surface, or at least depending on what you care about.
Right.
However you define development, any parent in their right mind would want to give their kids any opportunity they can, better than the ones they had for sure, an opportunity to survive in the world that they deem is going to be in the future. Countries in Africa too often don't have political stability. The person who wants to come back and invest in their own people has to go through all kinds of loopholes, sometimes placed by his or her own people.
Why we can't get along, why we're like crabs in a bucket with each other. And, I seen a picture where a white guy was trying to climb up the tree, and he had his white brother pushing him, helping him up. There was an Asian guy trying to climb up the tree, and his brother was pushing, helping him up. And then you see the African guy trying to climb up the tree, and his brother is pulling him down. I wanted to ask you, as a Native African man moving to America, how has dating life been? Like, are you married? Have you dated an American girl?
Yes, I'm married right now to my beautiful wife.
Mm-hmm.
We've been married 2.5 years now.
Congratulations.
Dating isn't easy. There's clash of different things. It's a clash of sometimes cultural values, sometimes behavior, priorities are not lined up at the same time, maturity isn't there at the same time. And I'm not only saying this for others, I'm putting it on myself as well. It is very difficult to expect from the other what they don't know.
The cultural differences.
And it's very, very difficult to place that on somebody. Men and women both do two things. Number one, don't forgive each other enough. Give room for understanding. I believe that too many of these conversations out there, black man versus black woman, being held in public or in a public forum, which I disagree with.
What do you mean? Like what we're talking about now?
Having these conversations that doesn't come from a place of having a purpose to heal. Everyone is having those conversations from a place of hurt. And having the conversation from a place of hurt will sound different than having the same conversations from a place of healing. Saying, for example, you know what, I did some stuff wrong. So that the other camp can also say, I did some stuff wrong. Then one camp can say, well, what can I do to improve myself, which will definitely help me be the person that I'm supposed to be for you, and vice versa. That's kind of what has been my experience here dating.
Clearly you like the African American women, though. Clearly you recognize the beauty in us.
Well, at least the way I see it, it's not like it's better one way or another, because really what you're doing is trading one set of issues with another set of issues.
That's what any
really
woman.
What you're doing. That's exactly. So, you know, one might be more submissive, but will be very bad with finances. The other one is very good with finances, but not so submissive. And so now it depends on the man or the woman. God is a provider and a protector, but he's not very romantic. Or the other guy is more romantic, but not a great protector and a provider. And so you really have to pick and choose where you think
what's more important. That is so true. That is so true. Like me just being a single woman, like I've met men who, you know, like you said, they would be a great provider, a great protector, but they just, the connection either wasn't there, or I felt like they weren't, you know, affectionate or romantic enough. And, you know, then you have the men that got all the time in the world for you, but they can't provide or protect you, you know? So it's like, dang, what do I do?
What do you do? Well, my theory is that in the Western world, a lot of things can be overly romanticized, where romance is considered a requirement versus a benefit. To require romance from somebody, to me, when you pin the two, you can learn how to provide and protect. I think it's going to be a little bit more difficult to learn how to be romantic, because so many things come into play, like how you say connection and not just the flowers. And I don't think everybody can learn that. Everybody can learn how to save money. Everybody can learn how to pay bills. So the way I would do it is not put romance as a requirement, but rather have it as a benefit, where you know you're going to enjoy it with the person who's going to come in with being able to provide. And it is a woman's nature to want a man who can provide and protect. The men that have to be there to provide and to protect, either they're not there or there are just not enough of them to go around. African men in general are bred into it to learn how to do that.
You hear that, I don't ladies?
Believe that. Huh?
I was talking to my lady viewers.
So you know, very early the boys understand. You know, don't hit the girl. She's a princess. Don't hit the girl. You know, she's soft. She's kind. She's, you know, not to say that she can't do for herself in an environment where that's what your father tells you, that's what your uncle does, that's what your neighbors do, and that's what your friends at school do. You don't know anything else. Culture is really teaching it and then reinforcing it.
There are some great providers out here, but it's very rare, and for the most part, those men are taken.
There isn't enough realization of the effect of the circumstance of blacks in the U.S., which, yes, some may say to that, well, you know what, how long is that going to be an excuse? Everybody gets to make their own choices and so on and so forth. So there is some truth to that.
But it's real psychological damage.
But to say it in a way where you completely dismiss the psychological stronghold that such a traumatic experience like that, 400 years of slavery plus another however many of segregation and Jim Crow, you have to understand that those things are very, very effective.
I'm so glad that you touched on that. And there's a big misconception that Native Africans don't like African Americans. And from the sounds of our conversation, I love how you recognize that we are one, we are brothers and sisters.
I would have to admit that I was one of those Africans too.
Mm-hmm.
I was. I'm not gonna lie. My moment or I would say my eye-opening moment was when I watched Dr. Joy DeGruy's video on post-traumatic slave syndrome.
Yes.
And that is a very, very... Now, because I'm a science guy, I just understood what she said. And before me, no one has ever spoken to me about these issues in that way, which I was one of those African guys who always felt that there was always an excuse behind everything that was said. We had slavery, we did this, we did that. And I was like, well, you know what? Where we come from too, we have wars, we have this, we have that. And it really took me, on a journey to open my eye and understand middle-class African man is going to send his kids to the U.S.
Mm-hmm.
A middle-class African man may be middle-class in Africa, but once his money translates to the dollar, he cannot be middle-class here. Money to stretch as long as he can so that his child can go to school. The child doesn't land in a middle-class neighborhood. Some aspects of it is very charming, appealing, the freedom to be able to do whatever you want to do is very hip, it's very rebellious, it's very charming. And then come here and then be hit with the hard reality of not being able to wear red, not being able to wear blue.
Oh, yeah, you're on the West Coast.
Certain neighborhoods not being able to, you can't go to this neighborhood, you can go to that neighborhood. Now, imagine me, I walk out of class at 9 p.m., I don't know these things, I'm walking home, and again, my father put me in a neighborhood that he could afford,
right?
But this is what, so imagine now all these experiences piling up, and then you go to a school with other students who they also have all that baggage and that trauma that we speak of, and because we aren't faced with it growing up where we come from, when we are exposed to it, we don't know what to do with it.
Mm-hmm.
We don't know how to react to the dark skin jokes, the nappy hair jokes,
mm-hmm.
the African booty scratcher jokes. We don't know how to respond to that. And also, when we come here, the same way the misconceptions that a lot of Americans have here of Africans, we do too when we come here. We are expected to communicate nicely when we haven't taken the time to regulate those different things. So as far as African Americans and Africans not liking each other, I think a lot of it is
programmed.
Is placed as if it's intentional.
Native Africans and African Americans, we can learn so much from each other. And if we join together, but if we realize that we were all one, as an African people, we would never be minorities.